The following is a production of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network.
Welcome back to another week of the UFHL Now. I'm your host, Kyle Hall, and teams were busy this week. There are 11 trades made, but before we get into those 11 trades and Larry with his insider report, because he's a busy guy this week, let's take you around the UFHL now and see what happened this past week. First, let's take a look at our standings. So as you can see here, no change to the top five. The Titans stay number one overall, 117 points ahead of the Royals, followed by West Coast Express, the Grizzlies, and Rock Republic. Where the changes did happen were 7 through 10. We had a shakeup there. The Stingrays move up to the 7th spot. The Gators dropping back to number 8. The Ice Vikings climb up to number 9. And the Yeti continue to fall down the standings, down to number 10 now. The Yeti, who started on January 1st, at number 5, have fallen all the way down to number 10. You can see here on the graphic of who moved up and who moved down. But the Yetis fall, pretty big fall, 5 spots since January 1st. And they were 19th in points for the month of January. So a very rough month for the Yeti. But the Ice Vikings continue to climb following last year's fantastic regular season. And the Gators and Stingrays continue to battle there for in that 7 and 8 spot. I feel like they've been going back and forth for a couple weeks now. But all in all, some changes there in the top 10. But the top 5 stay pretty strong. And the Titans hold their lead for another week over the Royals, who put up another very good month this last month as well. Now let's go into who's hot and who's not this week. Starting off with who's hot, the Colorado Avalanche forward, Nazem Kadri had a great week for the Grizzlies. Sorry, I think that should be Grizzlies, not the Eliminators there. 30.26 fantasy points in his last 4 games, 3 goals and 5 assists and 8 points for the All-Star. He's having a fantastic season for Colorado, who's battled just a bunch of injuries with McKinnon out for a while, and he's been just a rock for that team, trying to lead them back to a playoff run. So Kadri putting up another very good week and having a great season so far. Our next on the list is Johnny Gaudreau, having a big week for the Calgary Flames. The Express have to be thrilled with his output this week. 27.91 fantasy points in his last 4 games, 2 goals and 6 assists for 8 points. Gaudreau is a guy who I think this last offseason had some noise around him, if he's going to get dealt or not. Obviously, his hometown team, the Flyers, were a team that were interested, but I can't see the Flames really moving on from him. He's having another good season. He's just such a solid player. The Express have to be thrilled from his output this last week. Third on the list is Outlaws defenseman Chris Letang, who's having a monster year this year. Another great week. 20.33 points in the last 4 games, 2 goals and 3 assists for 5 points. And the Outlaws had a great week overall. Brian Rust had a very good week. I think he had 3 goals and 3 assists this last week as well. And the Outlaws in general had a good week. So, right after we have their general manager on as a guest, a very good week. Call it the UFHL bump, whatever you have here. But seems like every time a player or someone comes on the show, immediately their team gets impacted in a positive way. So if you want to be a guest on the show, reach out, because it seems like only positive things happen after you come on to join us. Our next defenseman on Who's Hot, Cale Makar. Again, this guy is just a machine. He'll be right there in the Norris Trophy voting towards the end of the year. I believe he right now is actually leading the preliminary vote for that. They had a poll that came out this last week on NHL.com for who would people vote for. Makar is right above Fox and Hedman and the rest of the group there. 24.03 fantasy points in his last 4 games, 2 goals and 4 assists, 6 points for the All-Star. He's just an unbelievable player, and the Titans have a guy who's going to be a fantastic NHL player for years and years to come. We have 2 goalies on our Who's Hot this list this week. First off, we had John Gibson of the Kamikaze. Now, interesting enough, the U.S. hockey obviously is not sending professional players to the Olympics, but the talk would have been Gibson or Hellebuck for goaltending for the United States. And the way that it's going right now, you have to think John Gibson would have been the starting goaltender in the Olympics for USA Hockey. 20.1 points this last week in just 3 games. He was 2-0-1 with a 2.27 goals allowed and 9.39 save percentage. I mean, the Ducks have been a team who have been a really big surprise this year, and a lot of that falls on Gibson's fantastic goaltending. The Kamikaze have to love what they've seen from their goaltender. Just a great season from Gibson this year. And then our second goaltender on Who's Hot this week, Gators goaltender Jacob Markstrom, 21.54 points in his last 4 games. He went 3-1 with an outstanding 1.50 goals allowed and a 9.31 save percentage. So the Gators are getting, Markstrom was extremely hot to start the year off, kind of fell off a little bit, but he's been playing very well recently. A great week there for the Gators starting goaltender. And I'm sure the Flames fans are loving to see Markstrom turn around a little bit now. Now let's get to everyone's favorite part of the show, who's not hot this week. We're going to start off with the forwards this week actually had a very good week. You can't really blame too many forwards for their team, but Blake Coleman's a guy who I kind of zeroed in on. He had 11.22 fantasy points in his last 4 games, a goal and assist. Not terrible, but when you look at Coleman, look at his contract he received last year. I think he only has 8 goals in the season this year. You would think you'd get more out of him. The Eliminators, I'm sure, were hoping for a little more out of Blake Coleman. We look at someone like Barclay Goodrow, who signed for a lesser deal, played a similar role in Tampa when they both left. They were 2 big free agents, and Goodrow's got 10 goals and 10 assists with the Rangers. I think that's the output that people kind of thought Coleman would be. So for him to be kind of trailing his teammate there in fantasy points is a surprise. But Blake Coleman, unfortunately, this week ends up on our Who's Not Hot list. But the rest of the list is made up of defensemen and goaltenders, and that tells you how good the forwards were this week. So second on the list is Devin Taves, 7.64 fantasy points in his last 4 games. Just an assist this week for the Warriors. So a tough week for the Avs defensemen. Overall, Colorado's been playing, up and down all year. But Taves, he's a very good defenseman, but a rough week for them. A rough week overall for the Warriors. I'm sure he'll turn around, though. And next on our list is another defenseman, Noah Hannafin, who for the Express had a rough week. Only 5 fantasy points in his last 4 games. Just an assist to show for it. Not the week the Express want to see from Hannafin, let me tell you that much. Anytime you average just over 1 point a game, not very good. Next on the list, another defenseman, Jeff Petrie, the Blizzard defenseman. Again, a rough week. 0 goals, just 2 assists, 7.41 fantasy points in his last 4 games. The Blizzard definitely want to see more from Petrie, who has kind of taken on that number 1 role there in Montreal. You have to think, is he a guy that possibly gets moved to the trade deadline with the Canadiens in a full downward tailspin now because they cannot do anything right up in Montreal right now. And we'll get to another Montreal player later on who's also on this list. But our first goaltender, and we talked about him before, Connor Hellebuck, the former Vezina Trophy winner for the second consecutive week, ends up on our list. The Grizzlies cannot be happy about that. A -1 fantasy point output in his last 2 games. So he's averaging -0.5 in his last 2 games, 0-2 with a 5.04 goals allowed and 8.46 save percentage. Just a terrible, terrible week and a terrible couple weeks for Hellebuck, who hasn't had a win in almost 3 weeks now for the Winnipeg Jets, which a guy of his caliber, and like I said, if this was the Olympics coming up, you would think he would obviously be on Team USA, but John Gibson is by far the hotter U.S. goaltender and who would have been the starter. So very interesting. It would have been great to see that kind of play out in real life, but Hellebuck, hopefully he turns it around because I believe he's just 500 on the season, so a rough year for the former Vezina Trophy winner. And then our last member of the Who's Not list, Caden Primo, the Warriors goaltender. And then anyone you throw in net in Montreal right now, it's going to be a rough go. But the young goalie, only 0.2 fantasy points. He played 4 games this week. He only went on record for 2 of them. He was 0-2 with a 5.12 goals allowed, and 8.57 save percentage. It's a kid who I think they have high hopes for in Montreal of maybe taking over the pipes once the Carey Price situation kind of plays itself out. Is he a guy who gets dealt at the deadline as well? What does his future look like? But I think Primo has a bright NHL future. He was a good junior goalie, played well on the World Junior stage. So I think there's a lot of hope there for Canadian fans that he's going to kind of settle into net, but a rough week for the Warriors goaltender this last week, and hopefully he can start to get some confidence and turn his game around in Montreal at the NHL level. And then now looking at our players of the week, and no surprise, this is brought to you by Elite Prospects. We just heard all three of their names. Cale Makar is your defenseman of the week, the Titans defenseman with the 24.03 fantasy points. Jacob Markstrom of the Gators at 21.54, and then Nazem Kadri at 30.26 for the Grizzlies. So two Avs players and a Flames player this week. So congratulations to the Titans, Gators, and Grizzlies on their players being named the Elite Prospects Players of the Week. And as we talked about earlier in the show, we had 11 trades this week, so we had to cancel our guest because Mr. Insider Larry Fisher has to go over all these moves, and teams were active. So let's bring in Larry now to talk about everything that happened this week. It's been a hot trade block. Larry, what's going on? You've been a busy man, I'm sure. What's your phone bill looking like? Have the emails stopped?
Yeah, we're burning up the phone lines for sure, and then the Telegram DMs, Kyle. It's been a lot of movement. As you can imagine, some of the similar, the Burnley Jacks, they never stop wheeling and dealing, so they're in the news again this week. Strong Island's made a lot of moves towards the future. They were responsible for a good number of trades this week, and again, the arms race within the top 10, as well as those franchises trying to crack the top 10. Heading into this All-Star break, we only got 3 nights of hockey left, then it's the All-Star break. We officially reached the midway point of the NHL and UFHL season this past week. So again, you get to that 50% of the way through the season, halfway done, and franchises really start taking a hard look where they're at in the standings and what direction they want to go as far as buyers or sellers. So lots of trades, and of course, All-Star is big news right now with the inaugural UFHL All-Star Game this coming weekend on Sunday.
Yeah, so let's get into the All-Star Game. Let's talk about where some players are falling. There's been some changes from last week's show of who's in and who's out. A couple of them I don't like, a couple of them that are okay. So let's talk about that. Let's get into some of those divisions and see as we close in, like you said, a couple days left before the All-Star Game announcement.
Yeah, the rosters will finalize following Wednesday night's games, so there's still a number of races to go. We named another captain this week. We can get to that. I'll let you handle that one with the Twitter polls at the end, but we have another captain announced for the Howe division. Was big news on the All-Star front, but certainly the final vote for the Orr division captain will take place this weekend as well, so keep an eye on the Twitter poll at the UFHL on Twitter. But we could start in the Gretzky division, Kyle, and you take a look at the Gretzky division roster, and ironically, it was a reverse of last week. So the 3 that were in last week are out this week, and the 3 that were out last week are back in. So Kirill Kaprizov just had a huge week in Minnesota because Chris Kreider, he keeps scoring. He's still tied for the NHL leading goals, but unfortunately, he got bumped back out by Kirill Kaprizov in the Gretzky division, and they're going to keep battling down the stretch. John Carlson bumped out Tony DeAngelo. They flipped again from the week before, as did Seth Jones and Rasmus Dahlin. Seth Jones back in as the rep for the Monarchs. And when you really look at the storylines, Kyle, beyond the fact that the 3 in, 3 out flipped from one week to the next and then back this week, the Chris Kreider, Kirill Kaprizov battle in the Gretzky division is awesome. Kreider is 1.27 fantasy points back at Kirill Kaprizov. The Rangers host Florida on Tuesday, and Minnesota visits Chicago on Wednesday. So who can have a bigger game there to solidify themselves as an all-star? Sticking with the forwards, the North Stars rep is even closer, and this one's really interesting because I know Cameron Turner and the North Stars love Jason Robertson. They're big Dallas Stars fans. They really want Jason Robertson to be their all-star rep, but of course it goes by fantasy points. Jason Robertson is currently 0.56 fantasy points back of Matt Duchene as the North Stars rep. Dallas hosts Calgary on Tuesday, and Nashville hosts Vancouver on Tuesday. So again, they each have one game left. Jason Robertson, Matt Duchene, who's going to be the all-star for the North Stars? And then you go to the blue line. And again, the Gretzky division has the most storylines of any division. And on the blue line, you got Brent Burns is 1.76 fantasy points back of John Carlson. Washington has 2 games to San Jose's 1. So Washington visits Pittsburgh on Tuesday and hosts Edmonton on Wednesday. San Jose visits Tampa on Tuesday. So advantage to John Carlson there. Tony DeAngelo, we mentioned, he actually finishes 1.81 points back of Carlson in the Battle of the Godfathers. They're both defenders for the Godfathers. Carlson has 2 games left. Carolina's done till after the All-Star break. So Tony D is out of the All-Stars process. He'll be on the outside looking in the Gretzky division. And other defensemen that are still within striking distance in the Gretzky division that of interest are Quinn Hughes, 8.99 points back of Carlson. Both Hughes and Carlson have 2 games left. Vancouver's in Chicago tonight and in Nashville on Tuesday. As mentioned, Washington is in Pittsburgh on Tuesday and hosts Edmonton on Wednesday. And last but not least in the Gretzky division, you got Rasmus Dahlin, 4.22 points back of Seth Jones to be the Monarchs rep. Again, this is one of those situations where every franchise must be represented in the UFHL All-Star Game, mirroring the NHL rule. Seth Jones came back from COVID, overtook Rasmus Dahlin, and now Rasmus Dahlin's back from COVID. So it's going to be interesting. Dahlin's 4.22 points back. Buffalo visits Vegas on Tuesday. Chicago hosts Vancouver tonight and Minnesota on Wednesday. So Seth Jones has 2 games to Rasmus Dahlin's 1 in the battle to be the Monarchs rep on defense. But as you can see, we're coming down to the last 3 nights of NHL action before All-Star break, and there's a lot of spots up for grabs still in that Gretzky division.
It is a crime that Chris Kreider is not in that playoff talk. Crime, I tell you, Larry.
Yeah, I mean, with the season he's having, you'd think he's a lock. And I mean, look at Nazem Kadri in the NHL voting, though, right? He was on the outside looking in when rosters were first announced too. And so yeah, it's interesting to see the snubs from the NHL to the UFHL. You take a look at the Lemieux Division storyline, and spoiler alert, Kyle, for all the suspense in the Gretzky division with 3 in and 3 out. The other 3 divisions, there's no roster change from last week. All the rosters are the same, so no turnover. But you look at that, the Lemieux division, obviously Connor McDavid captaining the Lemieux Division All-Stars. The real storyline here is on defense. You got Roman Josi is 1.7 points back of Adam Fox. And as you well know, Adam Fox is injured. He's not playing this week. So Nashville hosts Vancouver on Tuesday. If Roman Josi puts up more than 1.7 fantasy points, Roman Josi will be bumping out Adam Fox from the UFHL All-Star Game. Ironically, Elliot Friedman announced in the same tweet that Josi was named an NHL All-Star injury replacement. And he had mentioned Fox in the same tweet. Obviously, Fox will miss the NHL All-Star Game, albeit in different divisions in the NHL, but just thought that was kind of cool that they're kind of Josi's replacing Fox essentially in the NHL All-Star Game, and he very well could in the UFHL as well if Josi puts up more than 1.7 fantasy points on Tuesday against Vancouver. The other one in the Lemieux division to keep an eye on, Kyle, is Jake Gensel, currently 3.59 fantasy points back of Austin Matthews and 5.06 fantasy points behind Joe Pavelski. Pittsburgh and Gensel, they host Washington on Tuesday. Toronto with Austin Matthews has a home and home with New Jersey. Toronto hosts tonight and visits Jersey on Tuesday. And Joe Pavelski and Dallas host Calgary on Tuesday as well. So Austin Matthews, a good bet to retain his spot since he has 2 games to Jake Gensel's 1. But Jake Gensel's still within striking distance in that Lemieux division when you really look at the snubs and on the bubble and who could make a run for it. Keep all eyes on Roman Josi this week for the Lemieux division. And too bad Adam Fox got hurt because I'm sure he would have racked up some more points to secure his spot there.
Yeah, I got to think Josi, he's going to get that. He'll get 2 points in that one game. That's unfortunate. Yeah, Fox going down with the injury. I tell you what, if anyone watches Ranger games, you can see the impact that guy makes more when he's not in the lineup than when he's in the lineup, just showing how good he is. But how about my guy Mika Zibanejad turning it on the last 2 weeks and pulling away from Tom Wilson? I think he's got 20 points now on him almost in fantasy-wise, and they were neck and neck as of 2 weeks ago. So good to see my guy Mika pulling away from him a little bit.
He did, and you're right. 2 weeks ago, Tom Wilson was in the All-Star game. Mika was out. Now Mika's number 3 on the forwards for the Lemieux Division. McDavid, Landeskog, and then Mika. He actually overtook, not only did he overtake Tom Wilson, he also passed Austin Matthews and Joe Pavelski. So Mika Zibanejad's been one of the hottest players in the league the last couple weeks, and certainly has looking strong to be a Lemieux Division All-Star at this point. You look at the Orr Division, Kyle, the storylines coming out of the Orr Division. Again, no roster changes from last week, but you see Andrei Svechnikov's actually overtaken teammate Sebastian Aho there. When you really look down the list, Phil Kessel is going to be the one to watch, and Jeff Skinner. When you talk about every franchise must be represented, Jeff Skinner is currently the rep for Duckman's domination, but Phil Kessel, he needs a big week here, a big last 3 days. He's 13.73 points back of Skinner to be Duckman's rep, but Arizona visits Colorado on Tuesday and hosts Calgary on Wednesday. Buffalo visits Vegas on Tuesday. So Kessel does have an extra game on Jeff Skinner, but obviously 13.73 fantasy points, he probably need to net a hat trick or have a big week. So looking like Jeff Skinner will be an all-star. Riley Smith was far enough away from Ryan O'Reilly, and St. Louis is done for until after the All-Star break. So Riley Smith is in as the Assassins rep. And yeah, you look at some of the snubs here. When you look at guys like obviously Rupe Hintz and Riley Smith and Jeff Skinner getting into the All-Star game because every franchise needs to be represented in the UFHL. That comes at the expense of Vladimir Tarasenko from Kamikaze, Marcus Foligno, and David Pasternak, who actually passed teammate Patrice Bergeron this week to get on the snub list from the Titans. But the Orr Division looks fairly set, but there's still the potential for Phil Kessel to go on a heater here these last 2 games and possibly catch Jeff Skinner for Duckmans. Looking into the Howe Division, Kyle, and the storylines there's more storylines for the Howe Division than the Lemieux and the Orr Divisions, not quite as many as the Gretzky Division. Again, no roster changes. Nobody moved in or out from last week. But there's some real races here in the Howe Division for who's going to make the All-Star cut. And the big one to keep an eye on is obviously JT Miller's rounding out the forward group right now. But Johnny Gaudreau is 1.56 points back, and Matthew Tkachuk is 2.72 points back of JT Miller. Johnny Gaudreau with West Coast Express and Matthew Tkachuk with the Royals are chasing down the Gators. JT Miller, Vancouver visits Chicago on tonight and Nashville on Tuesday. Calgary visits Dallas on Tuesday and Arizona on Wednesday. So all 3 of those forwards have 2 games left in the NHL to decide this, and I think we're going to see a good battle down the stretch here with Gaudreau and Tkachuk trying to catch JT Miller. The other one is Jamie Benn to potentially catch injured Drake Batherson to be the Tornadoes rep. Ben is 14.06 points back. Dallas hosts Calgary on Tuesday. Obviously, Ben would need a real big night to get 14 points in one night to bump out Batherson, but not mathematically impossible. Obviously, Batherson will miss the NHL All-Star game, replaced by Brady Tkachuk there. So Jamie Benn trying to bump out Drake Batherson to be the Tornadoes rep. But overall, that Howe Division, you look at that division, and again, guys like Chris Letang, you mentioned how much of a heater he's on. The Howe Division actually has the top player at every position in the UFHL heading into the All-Star game. Obviously, Jonathan Huberdeau has overtaken Alex Ovechkin as the highest scoring forward. On the blue line, we did the poll last week of who would be the highest scoring defender. We had the big 3. We had Fox, Hedman, and Josie. They were all within a point. Well, Chris Letang comes out this weekend and overtakes all 3 of them. And the veteran Chris Letang is now the leading point getter in the UFHL as far as defensemen go. And Juicy Saros from the Outlaws is the leading point getter of goaltenders. He pulled ahead again this week as well, ahead of Tristan Jarry. So very interesting that the top forward, top defenseman, and top goaltender as far as fantasy points go all come from the Howe Division. So looking like a powerhouse division heading into that UFHL All-Star game.
I can't wait for this All-Star game. It's going to be awesome. Only in the UFHL can you have Jeff Skinner in an All-Star game, let me tell you.
Yeah, he's been hot for the first half of the season, though. You don't realize
he's been good.
Much maligned Jeff Skinner, but he's having a resurgence in Buffalo. I don't know if he's earning $9 million yet, but he almost got to 20 goals by the All-Star break by the midpoint of the season. So he's on pace for well over 30 goals this season. So we'll see if he can keep it up, but definitely a bounce back for Skinner. But you're right. You look at Pasternak and Tarasenko being on the outside looking in, looking at Jeff Skinner on the All-Star roster, they're probably shaking their head a little bit in that OR division.
All right, now let's get into some trade talk. 11 trades this past week. Telegram was every time I looked at my phone, there was a new message coming over for a trade happening. So let's get into these GMs and owners. What's going on? What's with all the shakeups?
Yeah, the Burnley Jacks, Brennan Kopp, expansion franchise, our version of the Seattle Kraken. You look at Ron Francis, not doing a whole lot with the Seattle Kraken. They're just kind of hanging out around the bottom of the standings, likely going to be a lottery team waiting on Matty Beniers and who they get in 2022. Not the Burnley Jacks. They're our version of the Seattle Kraken, but Brennan Kopp continues to be aggressive, continues to be bold, very much like the Vegas Golden Knights in their expansion season. They want to make the playoffs. They want to hold off the Brutes, who've been coming on strong. There's still a 100-point gap between the Burnley Jacks and the Brutes for that final wild card spot in the Legends Conference and battling it out over there. But the Burnley Jacks, again, you mentioned 11 trades in the UFHL this week. Burnley Jacks were involved in 4 of them. We couldn't even get last week's show out, Kyle. By the time we had the show out, I mentioned on last week's show that the Burnley Jacks had united or reunited Pittsburgh line mates by acquiring Danton Heinen. They already had Kasperi Kapanen. Heinen actually set up Kapanen for a goal in his Burnley Jacks debut, and the next day, Kasperi Kapanen, by the time the UFHL Now was out, Kasperi Kapanen had his bags packed. He was on the move to the Godfathers in exchange for Jordan Greenway. And what do you know, Jordan Greenway, who's been fairly cold, fairly quiet this season. A lot of people had high expectations for Jordan Greenway. While the Burnley Jacks go out and acquire him, and Jordan Greenway tallies 2 assists in his Burnley Jacks debut, as tends to be the trend in the UFHL. So that was their first move. Second move, and obviously Godfather's happy to get Kasperi Kapanen there, and Burnley Jacks happy with the immediate production from Jordan Greenway. Second move was to acquire the veteran Zdeno Chara, as well as Giovanni Smith, who's been one of the PIMS leaders in the UFHL and the NHL this year. Gave up a couple futures assets, including a 2024 first-round pick for potentially the Legends value of Zdeno Chara. But I would keep an eye on that because I know snipers have really been building for the Legends League. They've been acquiring a lot of older players, and I wouldn't be surprised if upon Zdeno Chara's retirement announcement, he ends up back with the snipers somehow. I could see a scenario where there's interest in bringing him back. But for now, for the stretch run with the Islanders having so many games remaining, I know Chara was on the Who's Not Hot list recently. The Burnley Jacks are hoping he heats up this coming week.
Chara went from the not hot list to get a town list this week for them. So interesting to see him on the move. And Greenway getting a contract extension actually announced today with Minnesota. I think he got 3 for 3 over 3. So I don't know if Burnley Jacks had that in their plans for their salary cap for the future, but interesting to have that happen right after the trade as well.
That's a great point, Kyle. And that does impact because the UFHL, the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League, is a full cap system using cap hits just like the NHL. And so, now Burnley Jacks have to look at that new cap hit for Jordan Greenway and how does that fit in going forward. And luckily, we have a great partnership with Puckpedia that helps make that a little bit easier. But Burnley Jacks just keep wheeling and dealing. That was 2 trades in. Their third trade, this one's interesting as well, Kyle. The big goaltender swap, Semyon Varlamov for Mikko Koskinen. But as well in this trade, that's not it. There's a bunch of pieces moving here, including Keandre Miller, Rangers defenseman, first-round pick. Jack Roslovic back home in Columbus as a former first-round pick. Burnley Jacks bringing in those 3. The Ice Vikings, Mikko Koskinen, taking back Mikko Koskinen, as well as getting Dante Fabro, a first-round pick, and Luke Shen even was a first-round pick back in his day. But two quality defenders to the Ice Vikings. They also get a first-round pick there. But the big thing here, Kyle, is the goaltender swap. And I think when I look at this trade from the insider perspective, Semyon Varlamov still had $5 million left next season on his deal. I think the Ice Vikings didn't want to carry that forward. Mikko Koskinen's $4.5 million, so almost a money swap, but Koskinen's a pending UFA. The Ice Vikings can release or trade Koskinen prior to his next contract, a potential free agent in the UFHL, because they're going to look to make room for Capo Kakkonen, Minnesota's sort of backup who's challenging Cam Talbot for a starting role there. They have Kaapo Kahkonen on their protected list. He's getting close to the end of his waiver exempt status, so they need a roster spot for him next season. They already have Alex Nedeljkovic as one of their goaltenders, so I expect next season the Ice Vikings will be running with Kaapo Kahkonen and Alex Nedeljkovic as their tandem. So I think Mikko Koskinen was more so a means to an end for Semyon Varlamov. But the interesting thing here is last season, Kyle, around this same time, the Ice Vikings traded John Gibson for Semyon Varlamov. Big blockbuster goalie swap. And going back to last year, Semyon Varlamov was hot in the second half, and he was a big reason that the Ice Vikings overtook Red Army and were the Founders Trophy regular season champions, largely thanks to Semyon Varlamov. Because last season, obviously, Anaheim was rebuilding and Gibson wasn't getting as many fantasy points as he is this year. But Varlamov was hot down the stretch last season, and certainly the Burnley Jacks are hoping he's hot down the stretch again this season. That has to be... and again, the Islanders, the least amount of games played in the NHL, they're going to make up a lot. I know Ilya Sorokin's going strong there, but I think as the season progresses, Barry Trotz is going to lean on Semyon Varlamov a little more. And if he can get his game in order and get trending in the right direction, I think he'll still be the starting goaltender for the Islanders heading into the playoffs. And again, that for the Burnley Jacks, they got Darcy Kemper and Semyon Varlamov under $10 million combined. I think that's a great tandem going forward in their goaltending as well. And then you look at defense.
I think pickup. I think that was a good pickup with the Islanders. Like you said, so many games, a lot of back-to-backs coming up for them, and a lot of 3 and 4 nighters. So I think he's gonna have to be huge from down the stretch. Obviously, the Islanders are falling further and further behind the standings, so they have to do something. And Soroka's actually been a little shaky lately. So who knows? Maybe the veteran gets the net back as number one. And Keandre also paying off with the game-winning goal last night. So immediate impact there for the Ice Vikings for Bentley Jacks as well.
Yeah, and Keandre, he's got nice upside. And the funny thing with the goaltending is it's not out of the realm of possibility that those two goaltenders could get traded for each other in the NHL as well. The Oilers have expressed interest in Semyon Varlamov. If the Islanders decided to make him available, the Oilers would need the Islanders to take back Mikko Koskinen and that $4.5 million cap hit. So that'd be pretty cool if they got traded for each other in the UFHL. And between now and that March 21st trade deadline, they also get swapped for each other in the NHL. And maybe Burnley Jacks are banking on that because, they see Edmonton starting to win again now. Maybe they hope Semyon Varlamov ends up getting traded and potentially capitalize on him being on a new NHL team. They also, so we talked about addressing their forwards with Jordan Greenway. We talked about the goaltending with Semyon Varlamov, and they didn't stop there. They also addressed the defense by bringing in Josh Morrissey from the Mystics. In exchange for Ryan Ellis. And obviously we know Ryan Ellis has been out injured much of his first season in Philadelphia. Now there's talk of a season-ending surgery potentially for Ryan Ellis. So the deal here is obviously the Burnley Jacks are, as we said, going for it, wanting to secure that wild card spot. They want players that are healthy and active, helping them in the playoff race. And they acquire one from a playoff rival. The Mystics are still in that playoff race for a wild card spot in the Legends Conference. So you can weaken a rival, and you can also add a player like Josh Morrissey. I think the Burnley Jacks are really happy about that. And certainly for the Mystics, Ryan Ellis, providing he gets healthy again, he could probably put up more fantasy points than Josh Morrissey. Plus, they get a real top prospect in Marek Kuznetsov, who was probably the Burnley Jacks' best prospect. So as we saw, they gave up a first-round pick or 2 first-round picks in those other trades. And then now Marek Kuznetsov. So the Burnley Jacks paid steep prices, but certainly and a bit of an overhaul. The fact they're already in a playoff spot and going strong, but Brendan Kopp never sleeps. You think the insider's busy. Brendan Kopp, I think, blows up more phones than I do. So it's interesting all the moves that the Burnley Jacks made this week. Not only addressing goaltending, but also upgrading defense by bringing in a healthy Josh Morrissey and trying to get feistier by getting guys like Giovanni Smith and certainly Jordan Greenway will add a little bit more of that than Kasperi Kapanen brought to the table.
Yeah, and the Ice Vikings also welcome back Evander Kane this last week, who just signed with the Edmonton Oilers. And I think in his first game, he was already slotted in with McDavid. So I'm sure they're thrilled with that and thrilled with him being back on the ice for that franchise.
Yeah, that couldn't have worked out much better for the Ice Vikings. Have Evander Kane contract get terminated in San Jose. Obviously, they were disappointed. They haven't had him. He's been MIA in the UFHL until now. I mean, you missed the first however many months of the season, first half of the season. No Evander Kane, who hits a lot of categories in the UFHL. He's a guy that hits. He shoots a lot, gets some penalty minutes. He was an impact player in their championship run in the regular season last year for the Ice Vikings. So they really missed him in the first half of the season. But now, not only do they get him back for the second half, they get him back in Edmonton on Connor McDavid's wing, and he opens the scoring, Kyle. In his Edmonton debut, his first game with the Ice Vikings this season, he opens the scoring for the Oilers and for the Ice Vikings. So, and the fact that he goes from a $7 million cap hit in San Jose to a $2.1 million cap hit in Edmonton, saving almost $5 million on the cap hit. Kane would have had 3 years left at that $7 million. Now he's flanking the league's best player and already making up for lost time. But certainly that $5 million cap savings and to go, anybody that lands on McDavid's wing is going to get the NHL bump. So yeah, definitely things are looking up for the Ice Vikings, and you showcase them. They're trending up in the standings. They moved past the Yetis again this week, and they're on the rise with guys like Mika Zibanejad and Joe Pavelski, and now you get Evander Kane back in there, Tom Wilson, Brady Tkachuk. The list goes on. The Ice Vikings are starting to roll again, and this is what they did last year, Kyle. Around the trade deadline, around the All-Star break or mid-season, they were a fair ways back in the standings, third, fourth place, and they just hit their stride and went all the way to the top. Overtook the Titans, overtook the mighty Red Army, and emerged as the regular season champions. So I don't know if a half a season is going to be enough time to go from ninth place to first, but certainly the Ice Vikings are heading in the right direction again with some of the moves they've made this week, as well as welcoming back Evander Kane.
The other team that was almost as busy as Burnley Jacks was Strong Island, also making a flurry of moves this week as well. Every time I look at my phone, either Burnley Jacks or Strong Island were making a trade. So let's dive into them. A little bit different of trades than Burnley Jacks, more of a future look at the moves they made.
Absolutely, Kyle. The Strong Island, they've sort of tapped out of that Legends Conference playoff race. They realize they don't have the depth to win now, and they've had some injuries. Braden Point missed time. Alexander Barkov's missed time. They have a lot of star power, but they just don't have that next man up. And they're really trying to work on developing the feeder system, the protected list, and get some high-end prospects that are going to fill those roles in the future, give them depth on their active roster, but also some call-ups, which you look at franchises like Kamikaze and Rock Republic in that top 10. They have so much depth, and they always, no matter who goes on COVID or injured list, they always have the next man up. And Strong Island hasn't had that, but now they're making strides towards that. And Strong Island's getting stronger for the future. They landed two real quality defense prospects as well as two quality forward prospects. Start with the forwards. They landed Ty Tullio as well as Sasha Pasujov. And as you can see here, Kyle, Scorecoin is going the other way in these trades as well. Ty Tullio and Sasha Pasujov. All four trades, they included significant Scorecoin, upwards of $1,000 in each trade. And the reason they did that, and they previously acquired Alex Turcotte and Braden Tracy in similar fashion, using Scorecoin as a trade chip for targeted prospects, again, with the goal of improving their depth for the future. As we know, depth is king in the UFHL, so that's been Strong Island's weakness, and they're addressing that weakness. Those four prospects, you look at the defensemen they got, Logan Lemieux, they got from Rock Republic, and they got Scott Morrow from the Snipers. And again, paid a pretty penny for both of them. In this case, Scott Morrow, they had to give up a first-round pick, albeit 3 years out in 2024, but still a first-round pick and a good chunk of Scorecoin for a prospect that was taken in the second round this year. But this year's draft is trending to be a really deep draft in hindsight already. And Scott Morrow certainly has had a great start to his college career. Logan Lemieux, surprise first-round pick by the Montreal Canadiens, controversial pick, but he's now back in the OHL and very productive there and trying to move forward with his hockey career. And again, a first-round pick as well as a big chunk of Scorecoin, 15,000 Scorecoin going to Rock Republic. So steep prices to pay, but I know talking with Terry Weber and Rich Phillips, the management team for Strong Island, they didn't bat an eye at those prices. They like the look of those 6 names on their protected list, going from a a mostly empty protected list to now having Logan Mailloux, Scott Morrow, Sasha Pasidrov, Kai Tullio, in addition to Alex Turcotte and Braden Tracy. So as you mentioned, Kyle, they've turned the page to next season mode and the future. Some of these prospects are probably 2-3 years away from making an impact for Strong Island. But rather than hang on to that 2024 first-round pick and invest score coin through the draft and then through the draft auction and then wait another 3 years for that prospect, they go out and get somebody that they feel is 1 to 3 years away from really making an impact for Strong Island and hoping to have enough depth to be a contender in the OR Division, the Legends Conference, and the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League in general in 2 to 3 years from today.
Yeah, some interesting moves there. A lot of score coin, like you said, going back and forth. So obviously they're not afraid to pay for some prospects and to kind of align their future there. Another trade I want to talk about, the Grizzlies made a big trade with Blades of Steel. A lot of names going back and forth. I think, was it 7 players in total involved in this trade as well?
And a similar approach for Blades of Steel, another franchise that has a mostly empty protected list, hasn't put a lot of investment into the development system, having that feeder system of again, I like to say next man up mentality, but they had Jacob Vrana go on long-term injury reserve. They had Ilya Mikheyev was out for a long time for Toronto. And you lose bodies, and if you don't have anybody to call up that's currently in the NHL as these young prospects or guys that have cleared waivers for you that you can bring back up, man games, right? You got to maximize your man games in the UFHL, and Blades of Steel, similar boat to Strong Island, they just haven't had that feeder system. So they try to acquire a couple guys, Linus Weisbach, Mason Langenbrunner, Philip Barkland, not household name prospects, but guys that have a chance to play in the NHL in the years to come. And for the Grizzlies, they're right there in that top 5. They're trying to hold off Rock Republic and Kamikaze. They're trying to catch West Coast Express and the Royals, maybe even the Titans. So the Grizzlies are looking to constantly improve. So they feel that Ian Cole and John Merrill are upgrades on Justin Braun and Jan Rutu. Or Jan Rutta. So that's sort of the breakdown of that trade is the Grizzlies upgrading defenders and the Blades of Steel, adding some prospects, trying to, again, build out that protected list, hope that a couple of those prospects hit and can be that next man up when they lose guys like that. Because Blades of Steel were a playoff franchise last season, Kyle. They were the 4th seed in that Lemieux Division, and obviously they've fallen back this year, largely due to injuries. They obviously lost Darcy Kemper in the expansion draft. That was a big blow. He was a really big part of their team. They have Ilya Samsonov, but he hasn't obviously been as advertised for Washington. He hasn't trended up the way a first-round pick would theoretically be performing right now. He hasn't been the number 1 in Washington, cemented himself as the number 1 anyway. So yeah, Blades of Steel certainly have fallen back to the pack, and one way they're going to catch up again and make strides is by building out their protected list and really getting some NHL-ready prospects. So they got 3, I'd say they're B to C level prospects, but guys that still have a chance to play in the NHL and really start to work on that protected list. While the Grizzlies, every point matters, and they want to get every little upgrade they can to catch the Royals and the West Coast Express ahead of them in that top 5.
Yeah, the Grizzlies, unfortunately, Hellebuck's been killing them lately in net.
Mm-hmm.
A tough month for Connor Hellebuck, but 2 teams also right behind the Grizzlies chasing down that top 5 are the Yeti and Stingray. I talked about earlier in the show, the Yetis fall from grace, from 5th coming into the month all the way down to 10th now. Every week, I feel like we're talking about the Yetis dropping down. So any insight into what's going on with them and the Stingray and how are they, Stingrays now have Adam Fox on the injury list. Have you heard any moves from them? What's that look like on the future trade floor for them?
Yeah, I think the trade watch is on for both those franchises, the Yetis and the Stingrays. They've both always been active in the UFHL. Scott Lowater with the Yetis has probably been the biggest wheeler and dealer in the UFHL since he came in last year, just before the trade deadline. I think he made like 12 trades in a week last year. He would have made this show twice as long. And I think his phone's starting to heat up again because he really liked the roster he built. And you look back to the power rankings, the Yetis actually had the most votes in this year's preseason power rankings to be number 1 in the UFHL. The Titans averaged out to be number 1, but the Yetis had the most first place votes. A lot of people like them as a top 3 franchise. A lot of injuries and a lot of COVID. And again, not a big protected list for the Yetis. They don't have that depth like Kamikaze, like Rock Republic, even like the Grizzlies and the Royals, all these other franchises. What we're really seeing this year, Kyle, but especially with the COVID and all the players sidelined by COVID is the franchises that are deep on the protected list and have the ability to call up players when other players go out and really maximize their games played. That's the key to winning in the UFHL. The Yetis, as well as the Stingrays, both these franchises don't have that depth on their protected list, and that's been holding them back a little bit from being top 5 or contending for the Founders Trophy as regular season champions. But I look at the Yetis, the fact they're slipping down the standings. I think this is where Scott Lowater puts his foot down in 10th place. He doesn't want to fall off that top 10 graphic. I think he certainly came out on the trade block and said he's willing to part with injured forward Sean Couturier for a win now replacement. So similar to what we just saw from the Burnley Jacks, trading away Ryan Ellis, who's injured, ironically a fellow Flyer, for Josh Morrissey. I think that the Yetis would like to make a similar move. Who wants Sean Couturier for next season? I might take back a slightly lesser forward that's producing this season. So definitely look for Couturier to be on the move. And again, once Scott Lowater surfaces and he's out there, as Nick Utley said on last week's show, he's the most aggressive trader. When he wants to shake something up, he seems to get it done. So the fact Couturier's name's out there, and we know Scott's fully engaged with the Yetis. He doesn't want to see them fall out of the top 10. And you look beyond that top 10, Kyle. You got the Battlehawks. You got the Red Army. You got Nick's Outlaws. I mean, there's a number of franchises within 50 points of that top 10. So if the Yetis don't put a stop to this slide coming out of the All-Star break, and again, this week being the All-Star break, I think you're going to see the Yetis and the Stingrays, some of these teams, some of these franchises really start working the phone lines because there's no NHL games on. They're going to be that much more focused on trading to come out of the All-Star break. And on the Stingrays front, you got Adam Fox injured. I don't know how long-term it'll be, but certainly they freed up $2 million in cap space recently by placing Oscar Sundqvist on waivers, and he was claimed off waivers, so they freed up $2 million that way. And one thing we know about the Stingrays, much like Strong Island, they're willing to include SCO in any trade for an upgrade. They already did so in acquiring Braden Shen, but I don't think Arlo Scholes is done there. I think he's mentioned multiple times that the Stingrays want to contend for the Founders Trophy as well as the Klein Cup this season. So I think they're targeting a top 5 finish. They're in that sort of 7 to 10 range. I think they're actually in 7th place right now, overtaking the Gators this week, but they want to be top 5. They want to be top 3. They want to be number 1. So I think the Stingrays are another team to watch, that they're targeting that top 5 finish, and they're going to need another boost. They're going to need to use that $2 million in cap space, as well as probably some SEO, to continue to improve in order to go up in the standings. And I really think the Stingrays and the Yetis are the two franchises I would have on trade watch. And the other one that's always busy, Kyle, is Kamikaze and Donnie Talk, and they just keep getting tougher. They're the PIM leader in the UFHL, and they acquired Curtis McDermott and Liam O'Brien this past week as well in the other 2 trades to bring us to a total of 11. But I look at that trade or those trades, and again, Kamikaze just continuing to be a menace to the UFHL as far as racking up hits, PIMs, fights. And Curtis McDermott even scores a goal in his Kamikaze debut. So you can't make this stuff up, Kyle. Curtis McDermott, that's his first goal of the season in his Kamikaze debut. But Kamikaze's always busy as well. And they've really valued toughness and those grinding, gritty players, as have the Ice Vikings, who had obviously it worked, a recipe for success for them last season, winning the Founders Trophy as regular season champions. But Kamikaze just keeps getting tougher and tougher as well.
I like that they're going to fight their way to the top. Any insider advice this week? Anything for all the listeners out there?
Yeah, the big news today, Kyle, and in the NHL as well, is that there was a rule in place from February 1st until July 21st of last season. Any player that was traded away or lost on waivers in the 6-month lead up to that expansion draft for Seattle Kraken and for the Burnley Jacks, if you traded a player away or lost them on waivers leading up to the expansion draft, there was a window where you couldn't reacquire that player. You couldn't bring them back into the fold to avoid circumvention of the expansion draft, where I trade Kyle a player because he has an extra forward protected spot, and Kyle protects him, and then a week after the expansion draft, Kyle trades him back to me, and we basically just undo the deal. I give him his 2nd round pick back, and he gives me the player back, and we prevented the Burnley Jacks from getting this player. To prevent any collusion like that, any circumvention of the expansion draft, that's why that rule existed. But today is the day the rule ends, Kyle. That rule has been lifted as of January 31st, 2022, essentially a calendar year from when it started. So as of today, any player that you traded away or lost on waivers in that window leading up to the expansion draft, you're now free to reacquire them. And I know, Kyle, that the Royals have been on Telegram among the franchises eagerly anticipating this freeze being lifted. I know they may have a move in the works for us to talk about next week, because somebody they let go, they really covet, and they're looking at possibly reacquiring now that that rule no longer applies. And to be honest, Kyle, it was a rule that we put in just to mirror the NHL. We try to mirror the real world as closely as possible. I think it was a deterrent to any kind of shady business or trying to circumvent the expansion draft. But in all reality, it was a non-issue in the UFHL. Maybe thanks to the rule, but generally speaking, I don't think any franchises were thinking about trying to hide players and avoid the expansion draft. So nonetheless, now the players that you lost between February 1st and July 21st of last year, you're free to reacquire them. And I'm sure we'll see a few of them make their way home, including potentially to the Royals.
Yeah, that's very interesting. We'll see who gets moved back to their former franchises. And then some other interesting news to share. We have a whole list of brand new digital athletes. We had Ryan Malone on a couple weeks ago, and he is a UFHL or UFS Sports digital athlete with an NFT coming out. And we have a couple to announce this week. Very exciting. A couple other members of the Malone family. His father, Greg Malone, the Pittsburgh legend, not only on the ice but off the ice, helped build these 90 Stanley Cup teams and acquire all that great talent. He is joined as a digital athlete, as well as his cousin Brad, who is in the Oilers organization, has joined. We also have Taylor Layer. Was it Liar?
Taylor Lear, yeah.
There, yep, from the Philadelphia Flyers. Zach Hayes from the Vegas Golden Knights, and Zach Fukali from the Washington Capitals. So, a lot of players that are now coming on board as digital athletes, and it's very exciting to see some of these names come out.
Yeah, it's going to be a steady stream now, Kyle, and certainly Zach Fukali just announced today another great addition, a guy that's won the Spengler Cup twice. He's been a World Junior champion. He's been a Halinka champion. He's been a QMJHL league champion. He's basically won at every level, and now trying to break into the NHL. He actually set the record this season, Kyle, for longest shutout streak to start an NHL career. So yeah, he's in the NHL record book as well. So Zach Fukali, great guy, great to have him in the fold with the UFFS, as well as the Malone family tree, as you mentioned. Ryan being an ambassador was brought in his dad Greg and his cousin Brad, who's had a great pro career as well. Brad and obviously Greg, very, like I said, accomplished on and off the ice, drafting everybody from Jaromir Jagr to Sidney Crosby in Pittsburgh. Taylor Lear, a guy who had a good career. Zach Hayes, a guy who's on the rise. And Zach Hayes actually has the same agent, same representation, Jason Davidson, as his agent, as the guys that were previously announced as active players. Our first three active players were Ethan Bear, Braden Schneider, and Nolan Allen. And Zach Hayes, I believe, comes from that same player management agency. So great to have Zach Hayes involved. He was a teammate in Prince Albert, I believe, with Nolan Allen, or he came through that Prince Albert Raiders system as well. And also, we have Dave the Hammer Schultz and Ryan Malone for the Legends League, and obviously Greg Malone for the Legends League. We got a mixture of active athletes that are working their way up, guys that are already in the NHL, and guys that are retired and looking forward to the Legends League. And there's more athlete announcements to come. No spoilers from the insider, but there's a few more exciting ones in the works in the weeks and months to come.
Yeah, behind the scenes, it's very exciting to see all the names that are starting to leak out here and there. And it seems like every day a new athlete's being announced. So not only on the hockey side, but football as well. You see athletes coming every day. So very exciting stuff around the UFS world and all the digital athletes that bring in the NFTs. Some of the stuff that's been out there already is unbelievable. So cool, some of the designs that they came up with.
Yeah, George Batchel and then the NFT department's doing a great job. I know they have another exciting release planned for, if not today, this week, and with NFTs with the football side, and yeah, just in general, the football has the first ever Legends League. We're actually seeing Legends League come to life this week with the American Football Legends League. They kicked that off this weekend with IKS Media and AO Sports, and that's going to be great for the football side. See all those old retired greats back on the field, and it's only a matter of time till we have our retired greats and the hockey side back on the ice too. Hopefully by the end of this year, if not for the summer and the off season. So Legends League is a big priority for us going forward in the hockey side as well, especially as more of these retired athletes are joining the platform and hoping to get their digital careers started all over again.
Very exciting stuff. Larry, thanks so much. And keep your phone on you because I'm sure it's going to be a busy week again.
Yeah, I can't wait to see, Kyle, who ends up locking down these all-star spots over the last 3 nights of NHL games to really finalize rosters for us on, I guess, Wednesday night or Thursday. We'll know the UFHL rosters going in. And as we covered, Kyle, there's at least a half dozen of really close battles for roster spots. And again, too bad Adam Fox is hurt because I think he could have held off Roman Josi, and maybe Roman Josi will get blanked in that Nashville game, and you'll be able to have one extra Ranger on that Lemieux Division All-Star roster.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm holding out hope for Kreider to sneak back in. That's a whole lot of hope for. But thanks so much, Larry. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, Kyle.
All right, before we sign off for this week, let's take a look at our Twitter polls. Let's take a look at actually who was named captain. Alexander Ovechkin won the Twitter poll for the All-Star captaincy, so congratulations to the Great Eight. He is going to be the Howe Division captain. He won at 62% of the vote over Steven Stamkos and Victor Hedman there. So the Capitals captain, who I believe was his name captain also of the Metro in the NHL as well, will captain the Howe Division. So congratulations there. And then our other Twitter poll from last week is, which defenseman do you think will be named? We'll finish the season with more fantasy points with former Norris Trophy winners. Adam Fox, my guy, finished at 59%. I gotta think probably most of my Ranger followers jumped on there and and answered the call after I put it out. So the Stingrays defenseman, Clips, Hedman of the Mystics, and Roman Josi, the Crypto Knights. Although Josi looks like he's going to catch Fox there for the All-Star game, like Larry was saying. But Adam Fox with 59% of the vote. Let's hope that holds true. Let's hope he brings home another Norris Trophy this next season. Although Cale Makar, like we said earlier, is hot as can be and is right now probably leading the way. And then this week's Twitter poll, let's hear it. This will be posted on the UFHL Twitter account. Which division will win the All-Star game? Pretty straightforward. The Gretzky, Lemieux, or Howe. Like Larry said, the rosters will be announced, I believe, Wednesday is the final game, so the rosters will be announced right after the final game. You can see who makes it. So go on there and vote which division you think's going to win. You can't go wrong. All these divisions are extremely strong. So we'll see. It's going to be very exciting. I'm very excited to see the first inaugural All-Star game here for the UFHL. Very exciting times. Very exciting to see all these new digital athletes. So thanks so much for joining us this week, and we'll see you next week. Enjoy the All-Star festivities.